Thank you very much. Caroline Ansell.
Thank you very much. And it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Sir Gary, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for Coventry North West on securing this debate and setting out so very clearly many of the challenges that we all share in our constituencies. And I wanted today to focus my comments on one particular planning application in Willingdon, which sits in the constituency of Eastbourne, essentially because in this one planning application, it reflects all that is wrong and all that needs reform in the planning system, and reflects all the very many concerns that are felt by my constituents. In terms of those needs for reform, the 5-year land supply has already been cited, and I would really echo that. This particular planning authority currently has 8,000 approvals that have not been built, and yet is held hostage to speculative development because of the absence of that local plan. It demonstrates very powerfully the very weak voice of local determination, because this has come through absolutely against the wishes and desires of the local community. And it also reflects some of the fault lines in the calculation of housing need. This particular site, this greenfield site, so cherished by the local community, represents probably the final green space between Eastbourne and Willingdon. It essentially changes, and forever, the character of this local, once village, now increasingly part of this urban fringe. It takes important agricultural land out of use. It's well recognised as an area of flooding concern. And what absolutely mystifies me then is how Southern Water can give its support and endorsement to this planning application based on the use and the oftentimes use of storm overflows. That can't be right. Congestion, road safety, all of these things are in the mix. But for the purposes of this debate, I want to focus on due process. And I know that my concerns are very much shared by my parliamentary neighbour, the Honourable Member for Lewis. I recently spoke at the appeal inquiry last month, 6th of September. There I outlined the fundamental and fatal flaws exposed in our local transport models in a 2019 report by highly regarded ACOM. There I argued, if the models are unfit for purpose, how can findings based on them be considered in any way safe or sound? In my opinion, they absolutely cannot be. Highways is clearly central to the decision to grant or reject this deeply unpopular proposed development, and was the reason it was previously thrown out. But what is of most serious concern in this is the very obvious chilling effect that the threat of costs has had on local government bodies and the democratic process. Willingdon District Council has twice refused this application. Days before the appeal, the council withdrew its objection, not because their concerns and principled objections had been answered and satisfied, nor because local residents that they had been representing had been otherwise persuaded, but because they had been warned by their legal representative that they courted the risk of substantial cost to continue. In this light, Willingdon and Jevington Parish Council, which had likewise stood against this application at every turn and contributed very strongly at every stage of the process, was similarly forced to withdraw. This, I'm afraid, is a damning indictment of the system and a clear democratic fault line. The decision has now been made. The appeal has been successful. So I would urge my honourable friend to meet with me and my parliamentary neighbour to look at this application and to call it in. I would also ask the Minister to look at levelling up specifically as it relates to VAT. New build and greenfield attracts a 0% VAT rating. Conversion, restoration, renovation of my Victorian town centre carries a 20% VAT penalty. It's very clear then where the balance of interest lies. And also, finally, to consider that brownfield first strategy mentioned by my honourable friend.